everyone, I'm Rachel from the Chattanooga Public Library, and today we're talking about Maya Angelou, Amanda Gorman, and the connective tissue of inaugural poets, poetry, and social activism. The tradition of reading poetry as part of the U.S. presidential inauguration ceremony is relatively new in our country's history. Our first inaugural poet, Robert Frost, one of the most well-known American poets of living memory, read his work The Gift Outright for John F. Kennedy's 1961 inauguration. This inaugurated the trend, see what I did there, of highlighting the arts in one of the most solemn and sacred ceremonies of American democracy, the peaceful transition of executive power and the beginning of a new four-year cycle of possibility. Maya Angelou was the second inaugural poet to ever speak, 32 years after Robert Frost, and the first inaugural poet to be broadcast on TV. Her poem On the Pulse of Morning, available in full at poets.org, won a Grammy and was written as part of her activism against racial injustice. Angelou began her art career as a nightclub singer, choosing music to share her original lyrics before she ever turned to poetry. She worked closely with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and her first full-length book, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, was a direct response to her deep grief over his assassination. Her collaboration with other civil rights activists like Nelson Mandela and Malcolm X defined her career almost equally as her written work. Since then, we've had only 4 other poets read at inaugurations: Miller Williams in 1997, Elizabeth Alexander in 2009, Richard Blanco in 2013, and the most recent, Amanda Gorman, earlier this year. By far the youngest inaugural poet at age 22, Amanda Gorman began writing as a young child as a way to cope with a speech impediment. She uses her poetry as a tool to overcome both personal and social challenges in her life. She experiences hypersensitivity to sound, as well as an auditory processing disorder, all of which influence how she uses words. Gorman was granted the elite title of Youth Poet Laureate of Los Angeles at age 16, and by 19, she became the first ever National Youth Poet Laureate. Gorman's poems follow in the footsteps of Angelou's in bringing art, beauty, pain, and social and civil rights events together in ways that call our attention to issues as it calls us to action. Gorman's inaugural poem, The Hill We Climb, and the poem she read at Super Bowl 55, Chorus of the Captains, put her on a national stage where she demonstrated the connection between poetic art and social activism. She is the first poet ever awarded the chance to speak at a Super Bowl. If you're interested in watching her full performance, we've included a link to that below in the description. In her forthcoming picture book, Change Sings, she connects poetry, song, and social justice to young readers. The book jacket reads, "Anything is possible when our voices join together. As a young girl leads a cast of characters on a musical journey, they learn that they have the power to make changes, big or small, in the world, in their communities, and most importantly, in themselves." Humanity has a long history of being inspired to action by songs, which are, at heart, poetry set to music. It's why national anthems stir belief and pride in our countries, why chants at sports games and spirit days get us pumped for our teams or organizations, and why we can find inspiration to try to change our world for the better when we hear others sing alongside us where we protest, where we worship, and where we gather to celebrate artists, ideas, or human life. For example, Super Bowl 55 featured at least 4 different notable types of poetry: America's national anthem, the song Lift Every Voice and Sing, commonly known as the Black National Anthem, the halftime show performance, and Amanda Gorman's poem. Though spoken word poetry and lyrics begin written on a page, keeping them there limits their reach and ability to affect others. Amanda Gorman chose to overcome her speech impediment, by practicing raps from the Broadway musical Hamilton, by the way, when she realized how much further her work could grow. In an interview with CBS, she says, "Once I arrived at the point in my life in high school where I said, you know what? Writing my poems on the page isn't enough for me. I have to give them breath and life. I have to perform them as I am. The act of speaking poetry aloud requires two parties, the speaker and the listener. When you experience injustice and speak it, others have to witness that. That's how collective activism happens. It can't be a call to action if there's no call. Poetry needs voices, but it also needs bodies as well. When a poet or artist speaks their words aloud, their physical gestures and movements are not only intentional and deliberate, but communicate the poem's action that doesn't always translate on the page. More than just a recitation, poetry can be a performance art. And in that spirit, we're calling you to think about and write your experience, to share it with others. What issues or events or experiences that you've witnessed move you to speak them out loud to others? Can you take those feelings and turn them into a chant, a song, a rhyme, a poem? Remember, if you're moved by what you've seen, someone else will be too.